From Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the morning news brief on Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. We begin in Peru, where President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski has sworn in a new cabinet in an effort to overcome the political crisis following his pardon of Alberto Fujimori. Kuczynski replaced almost half of the 19 members of his government. 3 ministers had already resigned over the pardoning of Fujimori, the former leader who had been serving 25 years in prison for corruption and human rights abuses. Families of the victims and Peruvian social movements are planning further actions this Wednesday against the pardon. And farmers are beginning a 72-hour strike over their land rights.
The last 30 days have probably been unprecedented in our political life. Today, we are experiencing moments of tension, but we should bet on understanding in order to return stability to our country.
The political crisis in Peru has also damaged the political movement founded by Alberto Fujimori. Political analysts say the movement has suffered an internal split which could jeopardize his children's political aspirations.
Peru's Congress has often been the stage for the fight between members of the Fujimorismo movement, 2 different groups led by Keiko and Kenji Fujimori.
It's time for Kenji to grow up and to look for his own political path.
My parliamentary group wants to remove me.
The movement's crisis deepened after Kenji Fujimori and other 9 congressmen didn't respect the agreement reached with their parliamentary group and voted against President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, all to free Alberto Fujimori.
La agenda de Alberto Fujimori es mantenerse afuera.
Alberto Fujimori's agenda focuses on remaining out of jail and to keep his promises with Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Keiko Fujimori, his daughter, has a different objective. She wants to avoid being arrested and wants an option to hold the top position.
Librar la cárcel y tentar ser una opción de gobierno.
But the group that is following Kenji Fujimori has become even bigger, with 25 congressmen supporting him. Analyst Alberto Andreasen said that Keiko Fujimori is losing power in Congress, as well as her political influence with his father out of jail.
The future of the Fujimorismo movement as we know it is uncertain. Maybe we are even looking at the end of Fujimorismo because of the internal crisis the movement is facing.
This political crisis has also influenced the people.
I think that Keiko has other interests besides politics, and that her brother Kenji has only family interests.
I think this is a media strategy to distract the country from other things.
Meanwhile, Alberto Fujimori is enjoying his freedom and is sending messages on social media, giving his opinion about what is happening in Peru. Despite after being pardoned, he said that he would take a step back from politics.
After an earthquake of magnitude 7.6 struck the northern part of Central America, it prompted a tsunami warning for parts of the region. The Caribbean leaders have announced that they are ready via Twitter. Tweets from the Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez and Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced that they are monitoring the situation. There were no early reports of serious damage. Tsunami warning centers initially issued advisories of tsunami danger, but they later canceled this warning. The ceasefire between the ELN and the Colombian government expired at midnight, as peace talks between the 2 sides restarted in Ecuador. Colombia's largest remaining guerrilla said it did not expect the talks to agree an immediate extension of the bilateral ceasefire, which it accuses the government of failing to implement it fully. It said there was a will on both sides for peace, but it had to be ready for whatever the Colombian army might be preparing.
El alto mando militar.
The military high command has announced that once the ceasefire is finished, they will give the green light to new offensive operations
So we have activated the whole ELN group to be on alert, because if there is an announcement of possible offensive operations, it means that we must strengthen our security measures. There are severe breaches on the FARC peace agreements. What that means to us is that if it's happening to the FARC group, it will happen to us as well.
Shortly before the ceasefire expired, our correspondent in Bogotá, Lorena Hoyos, sent us this report.
Compañeros, buenas tardes. Hoy a las 12 de la noche finaliza el cese al fuego bilateral.
Today at midnight, the ceasefire between Colombia's government and the National Liberation Army that lasted for 3 months is coming to an end. Both sides are in Quito, Ecuador, to take part in the 5th round of negotiation sessions, although nobody has made an announcement on a possible ceasefire extension yet. In the morning, Pablo Beltrán, delegate from the negotiation team of the National Liberation Army, said that during these new meetings both sides will debate the ceasefire, the difficulties they both had to face during these 3 months, and how to overcome these difficulties in order to negotiate a new ceasefire agreement to help during the peace talks. Several social organizations have sent letters to President Juan Manuel Santos and to the leader of the ELN, Nicolás Rodríguez Bautista, about the importance of maintaining the ceasefire in order to protect the communities affected by the armed conflict. There is a lot of uncertainty among the people because the ceasefire is coming to an end, especially as they have recognized the positive impact this measure has had so far in the communities, and that it has avoided the death of at least 95 Colombians and the injuries of at least 400 more.
That was Lorena Hoyos from Bogotá. The Foreign Minister of Ecuador, María Fernanda Espinosa, says the country is seeking the mediation of a third country so that the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, can leave the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Espinosa also said Ecuador would continue to protect Assange and had no intention of removing him from the embassy, where he has spent the last 5 years.
How would you feel after 5 years of being confined inside a little office without having proper sunlight and not being able to breathe fresh air? Even people who are in prison can go out and exercise or play sports. This doesn't happen for Julian Assange. His captivity conditions are very complicated. The UN Anti-Arbitrary Detention Group has said that he's detained under an arbitrary situation. The Ecuadorian government protection hasn't changed. We will continue to protect Julian Assange while his physical and psychological conditions are in danger. We are looking for different options in order to find a solution for this situation. We are considering the possibility of a mediation process. None of these well-known emblematic cases of asylum haven't been resolved without the cooperation of the involved countries, and sometimes the mediation of a third-party country. We are trying to find solutions for this case. From a human rights point of view, he cannot live forever under these conditions.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Pope Francis gave a message to the people of Chile and Peru ahead of his visit to the two nations, which begins on January 15. His trip will last 8 days, and he is expected to address the rights of indigenous people.
I
know the history of your countries. Shaped by perseverance and tenacity, I wish to thank God together with you for the faith and love you have for Him, and for your brothers and sisters in need, especially the love you demonstrate towards those who are discarded by society. The culture of waste dominates us more and more.
80% of Chileans do not agree with the state's use of tax money to finance the Pope's visit to the country, an opinion shared by several trade union leaders. We have more details in the next report.
Pope Francis' visit has cost in excess of $17 million, of which the Chilean state has to contribute almost $11 million, a situation that has not been well received by social leaders.
We have urgent problems in Chile that require a tremendous fiscal investment and resources. It's constantly alleged that there is no money. However, the Pope comes for a few days to make some activities, which are great for us, but it's a huge expense for public resources that are being used.
The Catholic Church will contribute donations worth $6 million for the cost of the 3 masses that Pope Francis will give around Chile. They will also finance the fuel for more than 3,000 kilometers that the Pope Mobile will travel and the manufacturing of 600,000 sacred wafers for Holy Communion. Among other things, the $11 million remaining come from the state fiscal budget that has millions worth of debts across different sectors of the population.
We cannot understand how the government in this particular visit distributed so much public resources when the rest of the people need a lot of assistance. It is not a rich country that is able to use so many resources.
The so-called historical debt with teacher unions is just one of them. In fact, in 2017, images of teachers demanding the payment of their salaries and social security were seen all around the world.
There are salary debts in different sectors. 7 billion debt in the teachers' union case, in other labor and social areas as well. These are urgent matters in which public resources could be applied.
Various social leaders are concerned. They don't question the Pope's visit, but they reject the decision of the executive power to assign public resources to his trip.
The Pope's visit to Chile generates sympathy in a great sector of the population. They have great expectations, but the government is playing with people's hopes.
However, 80% of the consultants in the CADEM survey said they didn't agree that the state should finance the Pope's visit, an opinion shared by even the country's Catholics.
Ethiopian President Mulatu Teshome has met with President Raul Castro on a state visit to Cuba, where he paid tribute to Cuban fighters killed in African liberation wars. In the late 70s, Havana deployed approximately 17,000 troops to Ethiopia, including 3 combat brigades, and were a key force in Ethiopia's victory over Somalia. Cuban troops left in 1989 after Ethiopia and Somalia signed a pact to reduce tensions.
I want to say thank you to the distinguished Cuban internationalist combatants who have been with us shoulder to shoulder in Ethiopia in those very bad days of Ethiopia.
Bolivia's main trade union confederation, the COB, has called a 24-hour general strike for this Wednesday against the newly approved criminal code. The government says it is part of a political conspiracy. More details in the next report.
The Bolivian lower house agreed to override 2 amendments to the new criminal code, a measure requested by striking doctors and public transport unions. However, the unions demand the annulment of the entire criminal code and refuse to negotiate.
The National Assembly doors are open to any social sector who wants to talk to us.
Article number 137, which is the main concern of the transport unions, has been annulled today. There is no reason, from my perspective, to continue taking the Bolivian population as hostage.
Last week, the government accepted the doctors' demands during an ongoing 45-day strike. The political opposition and other unions joined this movement. Even a senator declared himself on hunger strike.
The people who are in the streets have given us the duty of defending them.
The head of the state announced that his administration will adopt measures under the law to respond to the political attacks.
After 8 signed documents and agreements, they are still not attending to the health of our people. Other interests guide medical unions along with opposition sectors to try to carry forward an anti-democratic political conspiracy. I have decided for the health and life of our people to take all constitutional and legal actions to restore medical attention and health services for our people.
According to an official report, the opposition and certain unions created a movement to press the government for the annulment of the new criminal code and try to stop the country by blocking the roads.
A team of Peruvian archaeologists have discovered a pre-Hispanic and 1,700-year-old ceremonial banquet hall in northern Peru. The findings include wall paintings featuring sea scenes and 2 thrones that are believed to be seats for powerful individuals of the pre-Inca culture. The excavators found a scenario where Mochica political and social activists were held. They also discovered more than 100 impressions where banquets, vessels, and plates are believed to fit in. About 52 million Brazilians, a quarter of the country's population, live in poverty, with 13 million of those in extreme poverty. A new report by the Brazilian Institute for Geography and Statistics says that the social inequality has deepened in the South American giant.
Marcos and his family are in Brasilia, camping on the outskirts of a middle-class district. He and his partner are unemployed. They have 4 children and don't have resources to pay rent for housing.
I am unemployed and I am from the north of the country. I came with my family to seek help because the situation in Brazil is critical and we need help.
Very close to Marcos, there is a dozen of families in similar situation. Some work informally to survive.
We are trying to get work. In the meantime, we are recycling, but we can also work in construction to earn something. But if we don't have anything, we stay here because the audit agency comes and takes our things and leaves us with nothing.
Between 2004 and 2014, tens of millions of Brazilians came out of poverty. The former Minister of Social Development and Fight Against Hunger, Teresa Campello, explains that this trend has been reversed in the last couple of years as a result of the recession and above all due to the neoliberal economic policy driven by President Michel Temer.
We are seeing big losses because the health, education and social assistance expenses are cut. With that, the poor people are losing jobs, and that forces them to work informally. That leads them to poverty. And even living in poverty, there is no help from the government.
According to economists, an unfair tax system is also another cause of social inequality. The Federal Council of Economy and other civil society organizations launched a campaign to make a tax reform that allowed a better distribution of the resources.
The mechanisms of accentuation and perpetuation of social inequality are various, but I don't have any doubts that the main mechanism is the tax model, the tax system that we have, because it's characterized by its aggressiveness. In a simple way, this means that those who pay taxes in Brazil are the poorest, the workers and the middle class, while the rich don't pay taxes.
Recent investigations indicate that 6 Brazilians have the same wealth of half of the population and that poverty affects women more than men, also more Afro-Brazilians than Caucasian Brazilians. This is the country with the highest income concentration in the world, and the current government does little to reverse it.
Months after a large earthquake hit Mexico, the housing market has seen a drastic change. We go to our correspondent Pablo Perez in Mexico City for more information.
One of the most noticeable effects of the September 19 earthquakes here in Mexico City is on the housing and real estate market. It's noticeable that because some areas in the city have raised its value, the value of its housing and rent, up to 40%, while some others, the zones that were the most affected by the earthquake, where the most buildings collapsed, have experienced what some people call an exodus of people that is trying to find housing in what they consider safer places, while real estate companies are trying to speculate with the future value of the back-end loads of the collapsed buildings. Also, in cases where the buildings were so badly damaged that they are deemed to be demolished, the government has agreed with the real estate companies to rebuild those buildings, but now with more departments, even if they have lesser space, more departments, so the new owners pay for those new departments, are going to pay for the whole construction cost, which some specialists, some analysts say it's a way the government is giving an opportunity for real estate companies to get more money out of the catastrophe that was the September 19 earthquake. These are the news here from Mexico City. We go back to you.
That was Pablo Perez from Mexico City. And now to learn how an increase in violence in Mexico is affecting July's general elections. Let's take a look at it in the next report.
In the face of the government's lack of action, representatives from the parties in the running for Mexico City's government have found themselves forced to sign a civility agreement.
The civility agreement is a pact between the city's government and the political parties to guarantee freedoms as established by the law.
The Electoral Institute oversees political parties' adherence to the law. According to experts, the Institute's advisors have not been efficient in previous elections.
I
think they're going to fall short of the job required of them because the people are even more demanding. In other occasions, they haven't shown the necessary willpower to put political parties and interested parties in their place.
As soon as pre-campaigning started, violence erupted against Morena's candidate.
Sympathizers of the PRD attacked us here in Coyoacán. They jumped us from behind. They're all cowards.
These attacks took place in Coyoacán's delegation, supposedly between friendly parties. The outcome was the death of a Morena sympathizer. Morena has so far been leading the polls.
Fueron también agredidos no solo militantes de Morena el día de hoy.
Those attacks were not just Morena militants, but journalists as well. We stand in solidarity with them. We reject the violence that happened on that day. It was an attack on our freedoms. Freedoms Mexico City has always been at the forefront of.
De otros, que son derechos en los que la Ciudad de México se ha visto siempre a la vanguardia, siempre avanzada.
Mexico City's government is considered to be the second most important electoral slot. In 1997, it stopped being a position granted by presidential decree and has since only been led by left and center-left representatives.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Catalan's main pro-independence parties have agreed to re-elect Carles Puigdemont as president of the region later this month. Puigdemont has been in exile in Belgium since his firing in October last year. So how his re-election as president is legally possible is still up in the air. The announcement comes after pro-independence parties won a narrow majority of seats in the Catalan parliament, following fresh elections on December 21st. So the figure of the independence movement, President Artur Mas, he announced his resignation from the presidency of the Catalan European Democratic Party on Tuesday. Mas, who abandoned his moderate nationalism campaign in 2012 and built an independence path by demanding a referendum from Mariano Rajoy's government, said he resigned in order to not obstruct the country's future.
In order to unify Catalonia, we should take advantage of the great electoral success obtained. I believe that the fact that I am currently the president of this party limits the possibility of this political project to expand in a moment of great electoral success, something that was unexpected.
A United States judge has blocked attempts by the White House to end a program barring the deportation of children brought illegally to the U.S. by their parents under Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. In September, President Donald Trump revoked the DACA program, but San Francisco Judge William Alsup ruled it must stay in place while litigation against the move continues. The judge ordered the government to renew this process application for people who had previously been covered.
Go ahead and find a good career path, a good job here in the United States, the only country I kind of know as home. and well, removing it from as the Trump administration is trying to do, would probably, take that all away from me and force me to go back to a country I don't know.
Unrest broke out at the funeral for the U.S. activist Erica Gardner, the daughter of police brutality victim Eric Gardner. The scuffle happened outside the First Corinthian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York, after security forces prevented Erica Gardner's grandmother, Gwen Carr, from entering the building. President of Black Lives Matter New York, Hawk Newsom, expressed outrage that she was not allowed to attend the funeral ceremony.
Like these folks in here hosting this funeral. Not dollars like the pimp Al Sharpton. Not dollars like these people who make millions off of our sorrow. She was a justice warrior. Gwen Carr is a warrior for justice. She deserves to be in that building. This is an abomination to the whole movement, and it shall not be tolerated. I'm ashamed of everything that happened. She should be heartbroken, and Erica is turning over in her grave. God rest her soul.
Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
At least 13 people have been killed in Southern California due to mudslides and flooding. More than 48 kilometers of the main coastal road have been closed. 300 people are reportedly trapped in a neighborhood in east of Santa Barbara. Rescue efforts are due to resume at daybreak.
Part of the problem with this is the fire created a situation where the dirt was able to wash down. Had we still had all of the vegetation on the hills, it would not have been as much of an issue.
Donald Trump's former White House advisor Steve Bannon has stepped down from the right-wing Breitbart News organization, where he had been executive chairman since 2012. The move comes amid an outcry over remarks he reportedly made about President Donald Trump's son, calling him treasonous. More than 100 cases of cholera per week have been registered in Congo, according to Doctors Without Borders, after floods enveloped Kinshasa in the beginning of the year. Since November, the organization has counted almost 450 cases of cholera, and at least 25 people have died in Kinshasa because of the epidemic. In the Italian Alps, more than 2 meters of snow fell in 48 hours, causing avalanches, blocked roads and hotels. A heap of snow and branches blocked the entrance and hallways of several apartments. 29 people have been safely evacuated. These heavy snowfalls are due to a phenomenon called return of east. Survivors from a boat that sank off Libya's coast on 9th of January have said that about 50 people who embarked with them are still missing and feared dead. Many survivors who were brought back to a naval base in Tripoli said there were originally about 70 people on board when they sailed off the northern coast. Libyan Coast Guard vessels picked up about 300 migrants from 3 boats, but one of them had only 16 survivors.
And we've come to the end of this morning news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Telesur brings you